England means everything to me. The easy choice would be to stay silent. I look at my country, I've got 3 children. It's my duty as an Englishman to make sure that I hand down a safe and prosperous country to them. They can tell people I'm a figure of hate. They can tell people I'm an extremist. The public don't buy it anymore. Most places I go, I get loved. I get loved by the public because they've tried to make me a leper because I talk about issues that expose their failures. They have failed with mass migration. They failed with integration. They failed with assimilation. The entire British Parliament have pandered and cowered in the face of ideologies that wish to destroy this nation.
Tommy.
Stefan.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, bro.
We've known each other for years.
Yep.
A lot of things have changed. I mean, you were one of the most hated men in this country. You were essentially almost a leper. You were pretty much untouchable. You were considered, the most hated man in the UK. Yet many of the things that you said, many of the things that you warned about, not everything, there's some things we obviously disagree on. We have different opinions on many issues, but fundamentally there's a few key things we agree upon, and one of them is that mass migration is bad. What is it that has changed over the last few years in the UK, say from the beginning of your activism in 2009, the establishment of the EDL, up to now?
What's changed,
Tommy?
What's changed? I was born in Luton in 1982. When I was born there was one mosque, there's now 45. Yeah? When I talked about issues I saw, yeah? Now the country's seen those issues. So when I started talking about them in 2009, these problems of mass migration, the problems of Islamisation of our country, the general public hadn't recognised it the way I'd recognised it. But Luton is a blueprint for every town and city. Now people have watched, they've seen what's happening, and they can see it themselves. And the perception's changed because people see that, when you say most hated man in Britain, the media have called me that for years, yeah?
Sure.
But most places I go, I get loved. I get loved by the public. So it's always this perception, and they've been very successful because they've tried to make me a leper. They've tried to make me toxic because I talk about issues that expose their failures. They have failed with mass migration. They failed with integration. They failed with assimilation. They have, when I say they, I mean the entire British Parliament, have pandered and cowered in the face of ideologies that wish to destroy this nation. They got on their knees for the Marxists of Black Lives Matter. They cower in fear in the face of Islam. They dare not even speak about it. The cowardice shown, the destruction of this nation and where we're at currently now in Great Britain is because of their cowardice, yeah? And right now, the British public are awakening in a massive way, not just the British public. If you look at the voting patterns across Europe, remember when I started my activism, when we first met, and I started my activism, I think the Swedish Democrat Party were on 1.5%. They're now on 22 to 24%. Geert Wilders is now winning the election in the Netherlands. Yeah? He was banned from even entering this country, yeah?
Sure.
He was seen as an extremist. He was seen as a leper, like I was, yeah? Everything he said was true. The warnings he gave, he tried to give a voice to the Dutch people about putting them first, about the dangers that can come, especially since October 7th. The whole world has seen the radicalisation, the hatred on the streets of every Western nation. Coming out of the universities, look, the best universities in the world are now full of people calling for the gas of the Jews. It's insanity. Yeah. It's a level of insanity it's awakened the world, and essentially the people who have lied the whole way through this, which is all of them, which is the mainstream media, their trust has gone, the monopoly they had has gone. They can tell people I'm a figure of hate. They can tell people I'm an extremist. The public don't buy it anymore. Yeah? They do not buy it. Obviously, I was censored. They censored me for a reason, so people don't get to hear what I say. They get to tell people who I am. Well, thanks to Elon Musk for restoring my free speech, because they were given a 6-year reign of lying to the public about me. And now I've been given my voice back over the last 6 months, and the British public have listened to who I am again.
Have you changed your views on anything? Is there anything where your views have evolved, or your views have changed, or you thought actually maybe I wasn't radical enough on this, or like I'd underestimated something or overestimated something?
I think if you dig up the first leaflet I ever made, which was in 2004 when I was 20, was it 20? And everything I say, I use it in my Oxford Union speech. Every word I say in that is exactly to the word that I say today. I've never changed. Yeah? What I said in that is that individual Muslims are not a problem. Extremist, radical jihadists are a problem. I said that whites and blacks are being religiously and racially targeted in the town of Luton. The Islamic community are given free reign. I talked about two-tier policing. Now the whole country talks about the two-tier policing. I spoke about Islamic jihad before people even knew what jihad was. Yeah. But only because I'm a product of the environment. I've grown up in Luton, where Al-Mujahideen, who were only prescribed in 2013 or 14, they are 60% of the Muslims in British prisons for terrorism, are ex-members of that group. I went to school with them. Yeah? Their head office, Omar Bakri and Abu Hamza's head office, was in my town. Yeah, my town. So I grew up had to learn who these groups were, had to understand the hatred, the venom, where it comes from, had to. to understand what was happening, the change in my town, the loss of freedom, the two-tier policing, the two-tier funding, the way the Islamic community becomes so powerful that as white English working class, we become irrelevant. They vote like a military fashion. They're block voting. The whole country's now seeing it.
We're seeing it because we've seen it with sectarian voting in a number of North England towns.
George Galloway.
Sure. And if there's a few other examples, I mean, there's an incredible poster in the East Midlands by Ahmed Yaqub saying, lend your voice to Gaza. That's literally his electoral program. And behind him is a dilapidated post-industrial warehouse building type where you can see the dilapidation of that town, but that guy's program is lend your voice to Gaza rather than let's restore this town to its former glory.
Rochdale, where George Galloway was elected, Rochdale had the biggest grooming scandal in our country, one of the biggest one in our country's history, of Muslim gangs raping hundreds, if not thousands, of young English girls. The election wasn't even mentioned. Yeah, everyone was talking about Gaza. Yeah, well, I'm being funny. This is about Britain and about putting British problems in our towns and cities. And whether I take satisfaction from it, you see all these people in here who have called us Islamophobic, who have shouted us down. They're now going to see the sectarianism. They're now going to understand it, because the people who are getting into politics now are Islamists, are pro-Hamas. Yeah, people going to be sitting in this building are pro-Hamas. Not that they're not already, because many on the left already are. Yeah, pro-Hamas. But we're not talking about supporters of terrorism, supporters of jihad, hatred to Jews. When we talk about even what we've witnessed, and people always want to shy away from getting to the root cause of the problem. What is the problem? Is it to do with Israel? Is it to do with land? I think Hitler's book Mein Kampf has 7% Jew hatred. The Quran has 11%. Let's not pretend it's to do with land, yeah? It's nothing to, let's not pretend the reason why these people hate the Jews, the reason why they're in every town and city across the West, calling for the death, the destruction of the only Jewish state. If we hear about Palestinians needing a state, they've got a state. 60% of Jordan's Palestinian. You've got a state. There's 21 Arab states, yeah? What you're calling for is not another Palestinian state. What you're calling for is the destruction of the only Jewish state. The only Jewish state, yeah? You've got 55 Islamic countries. How come none of them are taking them in? We've got these politicians wanting to import all the Gazans into Great Britain, to put us at risk, to put us at more danger. Even if you just look at the statistics of the way they think in these regions, they're pro-Hamas. So what you're saying is the majority of them are pro-Hamas. You want to import people who are pro-Hamas into Great Britain. We've already got an out of control jihadist ideology controlling this capital city. They've had free reign. The police have not policed them. They've not clamped down on them. They've clamped down on the people talking about them. Enoch Powell said it. They don't deal with the problem. They deal with the people talking about the problem. I'm easy to deal with. Stefan,
all we need to shut up Tommy Robinson is for the Islamists to be deported. And Tommy Robinson essentially shuts up, right? Is that the conclusion?
If people don't like me, if these lot don't like me, you created us. Your weakness, your cowardice to tackle the problem, as you've allowed jihadism and that ideology to grow into such a power in this country. Yeah? The demographical change, we currently have 40,000 British Muslims on the terror watch list. 40,000 now. Yeah? As the demographic continues to grow, I looked at Manchester. Every 10 years in Manchester, the Muslim population doubles. Yeah? It doubles every 10 years. So it went from 25,000 to 50,000, 50,000 to 100,000. 100,000 is going to be 200,000. There's only 500,000 people there. You're a generation away from losing our country. That's what we are. Yeah. And everyone wants to sit back and watch it happen. I had this discussion with a Muslim yesterday. I said, I'm sorry, you're not going to intimidate us into silence. Yeah. This is, and we shouldn't be ashamed to say it. This is our country. It's our capital C. You've been invited in as guests, and you're absolutely taking liberties. You're taking liberties in towns and cities across our country. There already should have been a revolution in this country over the rape and prostitution, torture and murder of our daughters in every town and city. Not just the fact that the Islamic gangs done it, but the fact that they knew about it.
They covered it up.
The police forces knew about it.
It was covered up.
They all let it happen. And they say it out loud. They let a generation of our daughters be kidnapped and raped, and they did not care. We are seen by them as cattle. Yeah? And they do not fear us. And when we fear them, that's tyranny. And when they fear us, that's democracy. Yeah? And we need to, I said, we've sat back. We need to get organised. We need to unite this nation. All we're hearing about is the Muslim vote, the Muslim vote. Well, the Muslims make up 7% of the UK. Yeah? We are a majority. We have had enough of mass immigration. No one's asked us, did we want 1 million people imported last year? No one asked us if we want to continually go into war. No one asks us. That's not democracy. No one's asking us the key decisions. Yeah? The key decisions that are affecting us all. They want to walk us into World War III now. And there's so much that's gone wrong from COVID, from the vaccines, from these traitors, from the liars, from every point of it. that the British public have watched. And if one thing, I had so many people who said to me, it was COVID, the lockdowns, the lies by Big Pharma, by politicians, that made me think differently about you. Because, and I always say, if they lied to us about Iraq, David Kelly was killed. He said 2 days before, I'll be found dead in a field, and he was found dead in a field. They lied to us about Iraq. They lied to us in Syria. We were funding ISIS. America and Great Britain were funding ISIS. Yeah, they've lied to us about every conflict. They've lied to the country about me. They've purposely distorted who I am and what I represent. I'm not saying I want to get rid of every Muslim from the UK. Yeah? I've grown up in Luton town. Some of the best people I've met growing up are Muslim. Yeah? That doesn't stop me from saying Islam and the encroachment of Sharia and the spread, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Do you know who's funding everything in this country? Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Iran. How have they got bases in our capital city? These fascist ideologies, the abuse of human rights in all these countries, they own half the capital city. Our country are pandering to them. Our politicians are pandering to them. They've bought our capital city. They've bought our politicians through their money, and the British public are fed up of it. So I just, and unfortunately, due to censorship, due to all these issues, everyone's scared to say it. And they should be scared to say it, because we live in a totalitarian state. You lose a job, you get depersoned. They incite people against you and violence against you. We have well-funded far-left organisations whose job it is to track down anyone that speaks out.
Sure.
That's not freedom. We don't have freedom and democracy in this country, trust me.
I was watching an old show of yours where you were sitting in the audience, and one of the points you made is saying, I get a lot of death threats. And one of the panelists said, "Oh, Tommy, if only you were a nice person." Do you remember that?
She said, "I don't get death threats because I'm a nice person." I said, "Try and talk about Islam, you'll get death threats." 6 years later, she comes out and tries to talk about Islam, and then she sits on TV crying because she's had a death threat, yeah? But the death threats against my children were justified, against my wife was justified, my mum. That's all justified because I'm not a bad person, but then she sits there as though she's the voice, and this is what we've seen. The thing is, these interviews are not going to age well for any of them, yeah? Jeremy Paxman looks like a fool, okay? Sure. Andrew Neil looks like a fool. Every show I went on, as Piers Morgan, fool, yeah?
I actually watched the one with Piers Morgan recently with you, and it's incredible to see how a few years have changed, what you were saying then, which appeared obviously to people who were living in very sheltered areas. Because this is, I think, a lot of the problem around you was around the fact that you were exposed to things that essentially the heart of London was completely shielded from. The demographic change it was really affecting and impacting the working class.
Yeah.
It was affecting children who were going to working class schools. It wasn't upper middle class parents whose girls are being groomed by grooming gangs. It was the working class who seemed to have really no voice, nobody to make themselves heard, and they were discounted based on their accents. And that really feels like that's changed. Who are some of the individuals that would have not touched you beforehand, or not even sort of dared to speak with you or be seen with you, that have since come out and been willing to interact with you and to be publicly seen with you?
So since the start of the English Defence League, many influential people have met with me. Yeah, I'm not going to put them in a position, right?
Sure.
They've met with me because they were desperate. Every time we went onto the streets and done a demonstration, it was a cry for help. Every time, like that Piers Morgan interview, we just had 20 children blown up in Manchester. Yeah. If we look at the Manchester terrorist attack, the police the next day went to the Didsbury Mosque, and the Didsbury Mosque put a banner outside saying, "We love Manchester." And the police took all their pictures outside Didsbury Mosque. I went into Didsbury Mosque, yeah? I got a leaflet. Do you know what the leaflet said? "The music made me do it." This is the mosque that Salman Abedi, who could recite the Quran without looking at it, who was invited into our country. His dad was a terrorist, yeah? They were invited into our country and given safety. He went and blew up children at a concert. The music made me do it. So I read this leaflet, and the leaflet talked about how music is satanic. Yeah, it painted people like Ariana Grande, who is what he went and blew up. So this leaflet's in there. I looked at the preachers that have been there, Abdul Rahim Green, Quick, people who say there must be death to people who leave Islam, people who say kill homosexuals. These were the preachers in that mosque. And then I saw Andy Burnham come out, who's the mayor of Manchester. He come out and said, and we're going to stand against this, fight against this. So I looked at him. He shares a platform with Cage. Cage are an extremist they're an extremist, Islamist, radical organisation. And the mayor, who says he's going to combat it, shares a platform with them. Yeah, Cheers, bro. The police who are there taking pictures, cosy pictures with the imams at the mosque that has been used to radicalise the person to go and blow up the centre. The cowardice in no one since Winston Churchill or William Gladstone, not one single person in that building has spoke about Islam. Bearing in mind how many jihad attacks we've had, we're not even allowed to ask the question. You're not even allowed to look at Islamic scripture to understand who Muhammad was. It's a conversation that's not allowed to be had, and we have to have it. When I went on that Piers Morgan show, that was the most watched episode of Good Morning Britain there's ever been. Yeah, that's ever been.
I didn't know that.
And that is because the public need this conversation. We are desperate for someone to talk about it. Right now, the reason why the mood's changed, women are scared, parents are scared, they're looking at their country, we don't recognise it anymore. Yeah? There's 1,000 years of English history here, 1,000 years, and they're going to give it away in 60 years. And what you're seeing now is the start of a resistance to it. The issues I tried to talk about in 2009, the public weren't ready to hear them. They're ready now. They're not just ready, we're more determined, we're more focused. I've learned a lot. Stefan, when we met, I was a young man. Yeah? I was 25 years old. I'd never been political. I come off of a building site to run in the biggest street protest movement Europe's seen. I had some bad times. I had some dark times. I've been in 10 prisons because of this lot. I've been attacked. I've had to walk feeling like I'm walking with a death sentence from jihadists. There's been 6 of them in jail for 20, 30 years planning to kill us. All of that at times played its toll on me as a person.
Of course.
The pressure, but I now can deal with that. Yeah, I've learned to deal with that. They've just tried to destroy my life. The best thing I get is they've spent 15 years with the full weaponisation of the globalist corporate media to tell the public who I am. I walk down the street and I'm loved.
How do you feel about that? I know it's a strange question.
I've travelled this country meeting families that have been affected by these rape gangs. I've sat down with the brothers, the mums, the dads. I always said, I've done a 5-part series called The Rape of Britain, and I've always said, when you read about these crimes, yeah, don't read about them, you need to feel them. When you meet the mums, you meet the girls, 20 years on, 10 years on, they're still suicidal, they're still on drugs. When you see it, I've seen the problems. I feel anger, disgust with this lot. Right? They've sold our country. They have destroyed our country. It's now or never for Europe. Yeah, we haven't got long left. With the borders opening the way they are, there is a mass immigration which is changing the face of this country forever. Not for the good. No one can say it's for the good. Yeah, no one. The criminality is going up. The level of violence is going up. Terrorism's going up. We're made to feel like foreigners in our own country. We can't speak up. So, and when you try and talk up about it, you're not even allowed to have a conversation. Yeah, well, but their labels are far right, their labels are racist, their labels of Islamophobe, gone. Doesn't matter. No one cares now. No one cares. They've overplayed their hand. They've lied and lied and lied. Luckily, now I have my social media back. I can counter their lies, expose their lies.
Why do you think so few men have spoken up in the UK and in Europe more generally? Why do you think there is this kind of broad and general cowardice?
It's not multiple reasons. They've feminised us. They've weakened men, what it is to be a man. They've broke down the family. Many children don't have dads now, purposely orchestrated. Here in the United States, I know when you look at 1960s, I think 80% of black kids had a dad. Now it's 20%. That's not a mistake. None of this is a mistake. They break down the family. They want to control what your children are being taught, not a strong father figure. Yeah? They don't want the family unit there. That's where the criminality, they want people relying on the state, not being successful, not having ambitions. And that has been a long process that's come in where they've chipped and chipped at all different things. And then they've got everyone mortgaged up to the hill, everyone in jobs where they've got diversity departments, yeah, where you can't speak. You'll lose your job. So most people, remember when I started my activism in 2009, I wore a mask and used a fake name, yeah, because I was that person. I was scared, yeah. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to be the person standing here. I knew what comes with it. I had 7 houses and 2 businesses when I started my activism. I was successful, yeah. I was successful. I lost everything, but so they've got everyone there. So I understand the people who don't want to speak out. They know they're going to lose their job. A totalitarian state, which is what we live under. Yeah? My film's going to prove that on Saturday. The film I'm premiering. They need to set an example with people who talk out. Because if they allow people to talk out and we're allowed to have the conversations publicly at a mainstream level, we get to look at their failures. Failure after failure after failure, which is what they want to cover up. You're not allowed to have the discussion, so they set an example by losing your job, coming down hard on you, harassing you and persecuting you with the police force, politicised policing, which the whole country now has witnessed.
What are some of the solutions? If you were given absolute power in the UK tomorrow, what would you do?
I'd remove every one of those fake migrants who are in every one of those hotels. And let me give you an example. So when I was 11 years old, a Bosnian refugee family come and lived in the Bishop family in my road, yeah? The mum come with the little brother and the little sister because the dad was killed in Bosnia, yeah? Real refugees, okay? He grew up to be a wonderful young man, yeah? He's been successful. That is something that you would be proud of as a nation for helping him. That's not what this is, yeah? This is young, military-aged men come in who are aggressive and hostile to our nation with an alien ideology, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah, no.
So I would clear the hotels,
yeah.
I'd put the military on our borders, right? It's a national security threat. It was a national security, I'll give you another example. One refugee come to Bournemouth in the UK, said he was 15, got put into school, sexually harassed the girls, yeah? When he's 21, yeah, he goes out, he stabs to death a Royal Marine in the town centre. We then find out he's not 21, right? He's 25. So when you put him in school with our daughters, he was actually 19. Then we find out he shot 2 people dead in Serbia with a machine gun before he come here. Yeah? These are the people, you're playing the lottery with our kids. You're playing a lottery with our country. It was 4 refugees who went on a massacre in Paris, blowing stuff up and killing everyone. The minute one refugee, they've come through 16 safe countries. The minute one of them committed a mass murder or rape, we've had multiple examples of migrants in hotels put up, paid for by us, while homeless British people are sleeping here. Half of London's full of ex-military personnel on the streets, freezing to death. And in the hotels, you've got 1,000 Somalians, Iraqis and Afghanis. Yeah? It's absolutely ludicrous. Even when you go into the schooling system, refugees or migrants get preference. So you might have had 100 years of history of a family living on an estate. Your child can't go to the local school. It's like no policies are for British people. Everything is given to migrants who actually don't love this country, not all of them, but there's now a fifth column. There's a fifth column who despise our way of life, who are intent on overthrowing our democracy and replacing it with a Sharia. There's mass numbers of these people now, and they've aligned themselves. What we've seen since October 7th is an alignment of the far left extremists who wish to bring down the system and replace capitalism, the Islamist extremists, and the Nazis. They've all come together. They've all come together because of their Jew hatred, really, but they've all come together and they align with each other because they want to overthrow the rule of law. We're pro-rule of law. I'm pro-democracy, yeah? But we want these people to represent the person on the street.
What are some other policies you would implement, aside from closing the border, deporting the migrants that can be deported?
I'd end Islamic immigration. I'd end Saudi money, Qatari money, Iranian money. Absolutely end it. The Muslim Brotherhood would no longer have a base in this country. The military would be dealing with these people, yeah? And it is a military issue, okay? They are a threat to our nation. They have bases. We have given a safe haven to terrorists because it suited us when they were at war in Afghanistan with the Soviet. Because it suited us, we allowed them to come here. We allowed them to set up base. We actually continually fund many mosques with our taxpayers' money in this country. Mosques who have preacher after preacher promoting hatred against us. I would end all of it. I'd end it, and I'd also encourage, we should have an encouragement of our identity, of who we are. Stop trying to teach our children to be ashamed of who they are.
What is the UK to you? What does England mean to you?
What does England mean to me? England means everything to me. England means, you see, the easy choice for me. The easy choice would be to stay silent. In every issue, the easy choices would be to be pro-Palestine. The easy choice would have been to be pro-Black Lives Matter. That's the easy choice. No one's coming down and clamping down on you. No one wants to attack you. There's no one going to get violent with you. Yeah? That would be the easy choice, but it would be the coward's choice. I look at my country. I've got 3 children. And I look at, it's my duty as an Englishman to make sure that I hand down a safe and prosperous country to them. We are heading into a time when they want to take total control of every one of our freedoms. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to eat, freedom to move, freedom to travel, everything they're coming down on. And whilst they do that, some people are just accepting it for a bit of convenience, or they don't want to step out of line. Well, it's time to step out of line. It's time to step out of line. I will never, ever allow my children to become slaves in my nation. I already know we're treated like second-class citizens in our own country, right now. Yeah? What's that going to be like for my kids? And what does it mean? When you look at previous generations, if you think about it deeply, 14 and 15-year-old children were pretending they were old enough to go and run and fight and die. Yeah? People now are scared to even talk. That's how they've got us. People are scared to even talk. Now, freedom of speech is the most pivotal point on this, because if we can't have the discussion, we can never solve the problems. But they don't want us to have the discussion. What's all these hate legislation. I would destroy every law that's come in since Tony Blair, the 4,000 laws they've brought in. All of it is to weaken our society, to weaken the family, to weaken our identity. And whilst they weaken ours, they celebrate everyone else's. They celebrate everyone else's. I'll also have an independent inquiry into the teachings of the Quran, to see if it worked. The European Court of Human Rights in 2007 said that Sharia law was incompatible with Western democracy and freedom due to their views on homosexuals, their views on women. Any of the countries that they're coming from, just look at the views. And that's not, it's not 99% of Afghanis want Sharia law. When you bring in 1,000 of them, like you did probably last week, they don't leave those views on the border. They bring them into enclosed communities where they're being funded by Saudi, funded by Qatar. All this money's coming in, and then they're promoted. And then when they're being promoted, we now have a lost generation of English youth who don't even know what it is to be English. They've lost their identity because their identity has come under attack. And then they're turning. They're either converting. There's no Cockney rhyming slang in London anymore. It's Jam African. Half the white kids think they're black. They've all lost their sense of who they are. Yeah, all of them. That's the new generation coming through because, and again, I'll give you an example. I grew up in Luton town. When it's Eid, there's a massive fairgrounds, there's massive celebration. When it's St. Patrick's Day, there's a 3-day festival. When it's St. Lucian Day, I've made such a solution, they have big fairgrounds and big party. When it's St. George's Day, it's banned. That's what it was like growing up for us. The school put out a letter, if you bring in the emblem of St. George, on St. George's Day, your children will be sent home. What message are you sending? Every school should be flying the St. George's flag. Every child should be encouraged. Every child. Like as I said, my mum was an Irish immigrant to this country. And my mum was an Irish immigrant. I'm an Englishman. I love this country because that's how I was brought up. That's how all children coming from countries, if we want them to embrace, but our government actually encouraged them to separate. They encouraged them not to assimilate. They've allowed these ghettos to grow and grow and grow. And whilst they grow, anyone who tries to talk about it, they've silenced. Not just silence, there's been a massive effort, a combined effort of politicians, big tech organisations, massive corporations, to not just silence, but they actually actively try to destroy anyone who tries to counter the narrative. And the problem for the left is it was all right when they were destroying me because I talked about open border immigration and it was me that was being censored. Then it become doctors, then it become nurses, yeah? Then you can't talk against transgenderism. Even J.K. Rowling now is a figure of hate, yeah? The goalposts continually shift. So long as they're allowed to decide what we can talk about, yeah, and the topics you're allowed to, or they control the narrative with their media, who continually pump their lies. The answer to a lot of these problems is citizen journalism. The answer is groups like yourself. You've set up. You've become a voice that people can trust. There's so many that when I first started, there was just me talking about these issues. Now we're about to hold a rally on June the 1st. Mayor Tusi, Calvin Robinson, Priest, Lawrence Fox, the Voice of Wales. There is now a consortium of citizen journalists and people with platforms who are coming together to highlight issues and to beat down their narrative.
Do you think it might be too late, Tommy?
No, I think that it's only too late when you stop fighting. You've only lost when you stop fighting.
So you have hope? Do you have hope for the future of the UK?
You have to have hope. Do you know what? I had this, so 2013 when they set fire to poppies, I was arrested. And I got bought, and when I got home and my wife was there and her nan was there and her mum was there. And her nan said, it's too late. Why are you even trying this? It's too late. I said, if everyone had that attitude back in the day, we'd all be German, yeah? We would. I said, so...
That's not wrong.
How can it be too late? How can it be too late when 7% of a population, it would be, we are the majority, but we are running out of time. Yeah? I believe we need direct democracy. Yeah? But if we don't get direct democracy in the next 5 or 10 years, yeah, the demographic will change to our country, the influence of the education system, then it's too late. Because if you bring in direct democracy, they're going to choose what they want. Yeah.
Sure.
So whilst we are a majority, whilst the majority want freedom, whilst the majority want a Christian culture, we have to organise now. And I believe that these cowards, when it shifts, the Overton window has shifted a lot since we first met.
It's shifted a lot.
It's shifting every week.
A lot.
Mass deportations are now becoming common discussion. Yeah, Donald Trump gets in and starts mass deportations. It gives the ability for Geert Wilders. It gives the ability for Le Pen. It gives the ability for Philip de Winter, hopefully if he wins in Belgium. It gives the ability for European countries to start saying, and why not? I saw the Swedish Democrat Party put in yesterday, I believe, or the day before, that even if they don't have evidence against the criminal migrant gangs, they're booting them. Why wouldn't you? These people they're bringing nothing to the country, yeah, but war. I saw that Malmo is now rated as dangerous as Kabul in Afghanistan. Malmo has the second highest rate per capita outside of South Africa, I believe. Malmo in Sweden. Yeah? You, this lot, have destroyed the stability and the safety. When they've took the safety of your children, if you don't feel safe that your daughter... I went to Prague, and when we was with some... I was only a few years ago, and the girl was going home. I said, no, we'll walk you home. She said, don't be stupid. I said, no, we'll walk you home. You couldn't let a girl walk home in London. You could not leave a female walking home in London, yeah? Not without serious risk. They've took the safety away. It's becoming normalised. Rape is normalised. Violent attacks, and it's by migrant men. I'm sorry, but Muslim men make up 2.5% of the UK population. They are responsible for 90% of the convictions. 90%.
Unbelievable.
In gang rape, 90%. And 30% of the men convicted are called Mohammed.
Are you religious at all, Tommy?
I'm being pushed more to... I wasn't...
Tell me about it.
I'll tell you about it. As I've watched as we've gone on, and I see Christianity totally under attack, yeah? My mum's a devout Catholic, my mum is, yeah? But I felt betrayed. I remember when I started the English Defence League, I spoke to Deacon Jerry at the church and said, I'm struggling with Islam, massively struggling. The more I've looked into it, the more I understand who Muhammad was. And he said, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And he got to the point where he said, forgive us our trespasses if we forgive those who trespass against us. And he made a point of that. I said, forgive them. That's your answer. Christianity wouldn't still be here if it was that weak, yeah? What Christianity now has become, I believe the church has been infiltrated by Marxists who don't even believe in Jesus or God, yeah? And they've used it for their own political agenda and to push their own political messages. Transgenderism, the Pope inviting 200 trannies into... It's insanity, yeah? It's insanity, but what we've done by destroying Christianity and losing faith in Christianity is leave a void. And that void's being filled. And lots of young men are converting to Islam. Islam is strong. I hand it to Islam. It's strong on its principles. It will not bow down. It will not change its path. Yeah? I admire it in certain parts.
You have to.
I admire it.
There is something admirable about these men having such a devout faith and such absolute conviction in it. It's admirable. There's something impressive about it.
It's admirable, but it's not a buffet, yeah? Which will say, well, okay, so you take the bits you like. Well, what about this bit? What about the verses that say this? You can't ignore that. Yeah?
I know.
That's a problem, yeah? But I see that the more I've seen the satanic symbolism, I know these things would be seen as conspiracy theories. The more I see Christianity under attack in America and across Europe, the more it draws me towards it. The more I believe, the more I see evil and Satanism, which we're seeing, yeah, the more I see that, the more there has to be the other side. So for the first time I said, I'm pushing that way more now than ever. I've always wanted to believe. I've sat in prison cells for months just thinking, show me. And I say to people, even if you don't believe, then the Christian way of life and the Christian culture is a great ethos for our country. It's a great thing that built this nation. And I saw an interview with the Queen which said, what would you say built Great Britain? She just held up the Bible. So there's lots, my life has evolved, lots of my views, even my views originally in the invasion of Iraq, now I see it as war crime. I understand the Muslims upset. I understand how devastating it must have been to see an illegal invasion, which is what it was, of Iraq, of Afghanistan, with no one caring about all the people who are being killed. No one giving a shit. As we invaded those countries for wealth and for money and for power, as we took out Gaddafi, which opened the borders of Europe, I now get frustrated and angered at what they've done and what they've continued to do. And as they've done that, they've radicalised a generation of Muslims and those they've turned on us.
It's interesting because if you look at it, it's almost like, I mean, you started, the reason was that Luton town was the airport through which dead British servicemen were being sent back home, or their bodies were being sent back home. And you had...
It was a soldiers' homecoming parade, and they were attacked by terrorists.
And they were attacked by terrorists.
Terrorist boys.
And obviously those boys, you know, those English lads who died out there, died ultimately in a war that I agree was fundamentally unfair and that actually did a huge amount of damage. So it's interesting because the terrorists that were there, it wasn't Abu Hamza, it was...
It was that group, it was Saif al-Islam, it was that group, it was al-Mujahideen. And they weren't prescribed at the time, and I went to school with some of them.
And the great irony is obviously that actually in some ways you can understand why they were standing there at that airport. It was a homecoming parade.
They were standing at a homecoming parade, but I understand, and I'll say now...
It's an irony, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's like we've come full circle in a sense of...
I get it.
I get it.
But I didn't get it at the time.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't get it. When you join and swear allegiance to Queen and country to fight, you don't choose the war.
No.
They do. Yeah? They do. So those Muslims who are upset about that should have been here. Yeah?
They should have been.
They've chose the place. And that actual regiment, which was a Royal Anglian regiment, Scott Mumford is from the estate I'm from, is 26 years old. He died. Michael Swain lost his legs, yeah? They were training out there, right? They weren't fighting a war. You picked the wrong people, you picked the wrong target, and it weren't just, do you know what it become more about? Not the fact that they'd done that, it was that they were allowed to do it. They were taken through, I watched them take jihadists through my town hall to attack our armed forces in front of their faces. Now, if I wanted to organise a protest against the East London Mosque, I wouldn't get anywhere near it, yeah? Why did you do that? Why did you let them go to the war memorials? Why did you let them go to the cenotaphs? Because you're too scared to say no to them about anything. The power they hold, the threat of violence all the time from their community, their leaders continually threaten our country. Lord Ahmed, when Geert Wilders, we spoke about him earlier, when he was coming in here to play his film Fitna, Lord Ahmed told our government, well, I will bring 10,000 Muslims and take over Parliament. They banned Geert Wilders. So they were threatened by Lord Ahmed, who's now in prison, I believe, for raping kids. And do you know,
can't make it up.
Mate, do you know
You literally can't make it up.
the show you were on about? Do you know the show you was on about earlier? Where
Yeah.
the man behind me, Dipu, he's now in jail for the Muslim councillor in Newcastle who was having a go at me for being a hate figure. He's now in jail for again sexual harassment of women. It's like you just couldn't make it up. Each person that's come out against us continuously, they keep falling. They keep falling. And they tried to deem us as extreme. They tried to deem us as extremists for wanting a safe country, for wanting a safe future, for loving our countries. In 2009, when I started my activism, it was like we loved our country and our country hated us back. And it weren't just our country, it was many of the public as well. But that's all changing.
Tommy, thank you so much.
Thanks, man. I went on
Really
a rant, didn't I?